Quilting Tale today. My name is Shaylin, and today I'm going to kick off the start of a new pattern that I've designed. So far it is just sketched out on graph paper, but it's a fall themed pattern with acorns and pumpkins and leaves and baskets, the traditional basket block, and I hope to get it done by October because I found this beautiful state park that has huge maple trees that I think will just look stunning in the fall if I can take pictures of this quilt with it. So when I saw this place, I thought I need to make a fall quilt and bring it out here because I love doing scenic photography with quilts. And so I'm gonna break this video up into a few pieces because otherwise that would just be a really long video, doing different segments of the quilt with each video. So there's going to be 4 main blocks. They'll vary just a little bit, but they'll be the same kind of block. And so I think that will be 4 videos, maybe a 5th if I do the finishing separately, but just to give you an idea of what's to come. I haven't made this before, so I'm not going to share any dimensions or fabric requirements just yet because I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but it looks good on paper. So I'm gonna see this pattern through to the end and hopefully it turns out as beautiful as I envision it in my mind. So before I start cutting up the fabric for the first block, I wanted to show you the fabric that I'll be using. I'm starting with a layer cake, and I'm going to be using the Shades of Autumn layer cake by Riley Blake Designs. And I will come in closer so you can see the fabrics, but I saw this in a quilt shop and it has some metallic gold in it, and I just thought it was very beautiful with the florals and just the fall motif, and I love the colors. It's not a color combination I've used too often, but I think they look beautiful together. So I have a layer cake, and then I also got a few extra half-yard fabrics just in case I didn't have enough or I needed something bigger. So again, I'm not sure what the exact fabric requirements will be. I just wanted to make sure I had more than enough. I probably won't end up using all of this, but that'll be great to add to my stash for later if I have leftovers. So let's come in close and take a look at the fabrics now. So again, this is called Shades of Autumn by My Mind's Eye from Riley Blake Designs. And so it has lots of this kind of burnt orange color, darker orange, pumpkins and leaves, and then I love the plaids in here, and I don't know if the camera can pick up on it well, but there's a lot of metallic gold throughout this pattern. You can see the metallic gold in the script there: give thanks, harvest, gather, thankful. And then it just moves on to the next colorway. So there's a cream, and the acorns are really sweet. I love the metallic pumpkins, and it's kind of actually a mix of everything. There's leaves, there's some script in there. This one I decided it's not really blue. I feel like it reads a little more green blue, but this is going to be my background. I think they call it tea, but it's, yeah, kind of like a tea green. Beautiful metallics again. And another plaid. And then there's the dark browns. And there's that tea green, leaves. I had taken some of these squares out earlier, so they're not all in the order they originally came in because I was playing with background options and binding. But yeah, those are the main colors: the dark brown, orange, cream, and then this grayish green color. last one. Oh, no, there's the gold script. All right, so that's the whole line. And let me show you now what I got some extras of. So this is going to be my background, that tea green color. Up close you can see the leaves on there, but from a distance it reads pretty solid, and so I thought that would make a good background instead of just a solid this time like I normally do. And since that's the background, I just thought I'd get extras of the 3 other colors that are in the background. So I got a cream that has the orange florals, I got the orange leaves, and then I got the dark brown kind of scatter of leaves there. Now I decided for the background, this one isn't part of the line, but I wanted to do a flannel, and this was hard to do online because I couldn't see how close the background would be to the flannel, and this flannel is slightly bluer. It wasn't as green as I thought it looked online, and I had taken screenshots of both of these fabrics and then scrolled with my phone so I could see a bit of each picture and compare them. I tried to match them as best I could, but seeing them in person, I still think it's gonna look really nice. Even if this is slightly more blue, it'll be on the back. But this is my first time doing a quilt top in quilting cotton and then a flannel backing. So if you have any tips on that, I'm wondering what the shrinkage will be like if they're that drastic. So if you've done that before where you have a flannel backing and then a regular quilting cotton top, I'd love to hear how that went, or if you have any tips. I'm not going to wash my pre-cuts just because I'm afraid, they're so small, I don't want anything to happen to them. So my instinct is just to wash them both at the same time when the quilt is done. But I really like this flannel. It's very soft. And then for the binding, I originally wanted to do the orange plaid binding, but I thought plaid next to plaid might be a little too much. So I decided to go with that metallic gold orange pumpkin. So it was either going to be that or, like I said, this one here, but I just thought that might be too much plaid next to plaid. I don't know. What do you think? Actually, I don't know that I could go wrong with either, but I got enough, I think, for this to work as the binding. But this one I think would make a really cute one as well. One thing worth mentioning is one of the blocks will be an appliqued acorn, and to make sure I have enough, I'm going to pull a couple squares now from the layer cake. So I'm going to pull a dark brown one for the caps and stems, and then I just pulled some orange, just a variety to be the body of the acorn. And then another fabric I got that I didn't mention before is just, this is a dark green, and this is going to be for the leaves on the acorn, so for the oak leaves that I'll draw out and applique later. But that'll be a different block, but I just wanted to make sure I had enough and I wasn't dealing with scraps when I'm ready to make the acorns, especially the body of the acorn. So you might make sure you pull those aside if you end up making this pattern in the future. I'm going to start by cutting the fabric for the leaves, and so I just pulled a variety of orange and dark brown for this. I'm going to make lots of them, maybe some extras because they can be used in the basket blocks later, but these will be turned into half square triangles. So I'm just going to go ahead and start pressing the fabric first. I'm going to use some best press on this just to make sure my pieces are really flat for this and a little more accuracy as I piece the half square triangles later. So I just get those ready. cutting pinked edges, it's a good idea to measure if the 10-inch block starts where it dips in or at the point. Usually what I've found is the points don't count toward the 10 inches, so when I line up my ruler, I do them at the base of the points, and then I just like to trim them off at the end just so there's less confusion when I'm piecing. Alright, I've got all my pieces cut and labeled, and before I start assembling our little maple leaves, I did want to take a little inventory of what I have left of the layer cake. I used mostly orange and brown in this, and if you recall, I did pull some layer cake squares aside to do my acorns later on, but I only have 2 browns left. I think I have about 3 orange left, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the ivory backgrounds. The only green ones I used, I have a lot of green left. The only green ones I used were the ones that matched the background, just to use those up. So that's something I didn't consider when I was figuring out how much fabric I need, is that depending on the layer cake, I might not need all these greens. Now I will be doing the baskets with a little bit of green, the parts that don't touch the background, and I might be able to include some in my scrappy pumpkins, but I was thinking I might need to get a little more orange or brown. I did use some from my half yard cuts, but I still do have quite a bit left. But just if I want more variety, I'm thinking I might get a couple more, and I did not cut into my ivory background. I did cut more background from my background cut, but I did get a lot of that one, so it looks like I'm still doing good and I'll have enough, but I'm probably going to end up with a bunch of extra greens, or just need to get another half yard or 2 for variety. The other thing, as I was cutting the layer cakes, I ended up with pieces, that are 1.5 inches. I'm going to hold on to these scraps in case I can use them in my scrappy pumpkins later, so don't get rid of those smaller scraps from the layer cakes. To make the stem units, I'll need 1 F piece and 2 matching G pieces. I'll draw diagonal lines on the 2 G pieces and align them to the upper right corner of my F piece, and then sew along the diagonal line. And then I'll press so that my edges are aligned. And I'll do the same thing with the other piece, aligning it to the top corner and sewing on the diagonal line, giving it a press again. Then I will trim 1/4 inch away from my seam lines. Save those little triangle pieces. They might make half square triangles later. One thing I discovered after making a few of these leaf pieces is that if I pressed half of my stem units out and then the other half of them in, like in this picture, they would nest together easier later on. To make the stem units, chain piecing is the way to go, so I'd follow the same process but make 2 matching piles of G units. And so start with 1 pile, just get them all chain pieced on and connected like you see here. Pay attention to directional print. That might play a factor in how you orient the square. And then take your second pile, the pieces should be in the same order, and do the same thing. Again, pay attention to any directional prints before you sew it on. Now that my stem units are done, it's time to move on to the half square triangles. I'll need my A and B pieces. I'll take the B pieces, which are the background, and I will draw a diagonal line on all of them. And then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides of the drawn lines. Again, chain piecing is really helpful in this step. If you have pinked edges, it's easier to align the straight edges if you have them, rather than try and align them to the pinked sides. And once you're done with one side, just flip it and do a 1/4 inch away from the other side. Here's a close-up view of what that looks like. And now it's time to trim along the line you drew, or from corner to corner. I recommend cutting all the pieces at once, but I'm going to demonstrate how to make a half square triangle with these two. So I'm going to press to the darker fabric, being careful not to distort along the bias there, so just kind of peel it open and press it going toward the tip of the triangle, then trim to size. I like to oversize my pieces so that I can later trim them down to size and not have to worry about doing a scant 1/4 inch, or worrying that when I do trim them down to size that I'll be too close to my seam allowance stitches. So as you can see here, once I trim them, I still have a good 1/4 inch away from that stitch line. So now I have all my half square triangles done. I've put them in matching piles to make it easy to lay out my blocks. Here are 2 leaf options in a scrappy all one colorway. So I used all browns here and just kind of mixed them up. In this one I used a mix of browns and oranges. I did kind of match the whole squares to the half square triangles in several spots. I could also do just completely random and scrappy. That would ensure that I have enough pieces. If I try to match all my colors, I might find that I'm short some browns, or if I try and do it this way, I might find as I make more of these maple leaves that I don't have enough pieces to make a pair. So I have to be careful about that. Either have plenty of extras, or which means more fabric, or just go for a really scrappy look. But I just wanted to show a couple options. Here's one. I did the mixed colors and just mixed the pieces some more so that the half square triangles weren't matching the solids, and actually really like how this one looks. So that works out because I'll have enough pieces for sure, and it will look really nice all scrappy together. So now what I'm going to do is sew these first 4 pieces together, and then these 4 pieces together, and then I can sew those 2 rows together and attach this piece. So right now they don't all look the same size, but when seam allowances are accounted for, that will work nicely. This middle row can be sewn together by itself and then attached to this one, and then down here I would sew these 3 together, followed by these 2 together, sew these 2 rows together, and then sew a stem on, and then this whole piece will get attached to the first 3 rows. Again, I prefer to chain piece, so I'm taking the first and second column squares and I will chain piece them together, going from the top row to the bottom. You can cut the strings or leave them as I have here and put them back, make sure everything is still oriented the right way, and do the same thing with the third column now. When it comes to the top fourth column, it's easier if your seams nest, and so I would take that top piece and just press the seam in the opposite direction, and then I just stick a pin in it to help keep those seams nested, and then when you sew it and open it up, you should have a perfect point there. So now press the seam allowances in opposite directions, and then you can sew on those edge pieces. And I'm just pressing away to the background piece. And I'm going to, again, press seam allowances in the opposite direction for my bottom rows, so I can then attach them. I'm going to press toward the stem in this case. If you recall earlier, I talked about pressing some seam allowances in and some out on the stem unit. So if I'm pressing in, I also press inward when I press the whole block, outward when I press the whole block. And there's my first leaf. So I have 7 more to make, and then I'll show you how to put the large block together. I wanted to point out, if you have directional fabric, a rotating mat or just moving a design board can help you orient the blocks and then any directional fabric that you may have. So if you realize you need to turn something, you can do that before sewing together. Also, watch the heights of your piles so that they're going down pretty evenly, so that way you're not left with a bunch of the same fabric at the end. Now it's time to sew the blocks together. We'll start with the top row, followed by the bottom row, and then press the seam allowances in opposite directions before connecting your 2 longer rows. All right, here is my finished maple leaf unit. I love how it turned out and just enjoy the process of seeing a sketch come to life in fabric. I think it looks even better with these vibrant colors and the shades of autumn fabric line, and I've made 2 of them. Like I said, there'll be a few different units that I'll make. The next one will focus on baskets and using that classic basket block to make a design. And in case you're wondering about the other blocks on my design wall here, these are all quilts in the works. I've done a couple videos on my Pacific Northwest quilt. I've totally neglected it, but I haven't forgotten it, and it's still one that I am going to finish. I just have some that are closer to completion that I want to get done first, including Moda block heads. That's all these ones up here and going down. I have 3 blocks to go until I can sash the top together. I started 3-inch socialite blocks. I haven't made much progress on that one. Every quilt I'm finishing, I'm making a scrappy brick house block for it to be a record quilt of quilts I finished around the same time. And then not pictured up here is my ombre puff quilt, which I just have to finish the binding on. And I also am working on the English paper piecing pattern extravaganza, which I've been sharing some of the progress on that as well. So lots of quilts to work on. I do think I will make this one cut the line. Like I said, I want to be able to take it out and photograph in the beautiful fall foliage that's coming up soon. Hopefully the long armor will be able to finish quilting it too in time. So we'll see. It's a goal, but either way it's going to be lovely. I just know I'm planning on calling this pattern Fallelujah. I think that word just kind of captures the joy of the fall season and all that it entails, and so I want this to be a happy quilt celebrating the season, and it's one of my favorites that I look forward to every year. So I hope you will stick around and continue to watch the progress and see this quilt come to life. If you have little ones and they haven't started their school year yet, you might also watch a video that I made at the end of last summer. It was about how to make a schultüte or school cone, if you're interested in starting that tradition with your family. But I'll link that at the end of this video. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you don't want to miss the progress of this quilt as it comes together and just watch it go from a sketch to an actual quilt. And once I have all the fabric requirements and figure out any tips that might make this easier to pull together, I will type it up in a pattern that'll make available on my website. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you soon with the next block.